Okay, I think what I want to do is on my channel, I'm not gonna post a big long diatribe about my experience and what I've been through. Instead, what I'm going to do is post segments, because there's a lot going on in my life. But really, my main concern isn't my life; it's my kids that I'm concerned about, and it's getting justice for my kids, which in this country feels impossible because people are not aware of what's going on. It's not being talked about. When it is talked about, people are labeled as crazy. They get hate messages. That's what's happened to me. And I wasn't even talking about like any of the deep state conspiracies. I was simply talking about the fact that I wasn't able to even contact, call, or see my kids. But I'm going to do a segment right now on okay, I'm not going to say the conspiracy that I think is going on. I want viewers to kind of conclude. So I'm just going to go over the alienation that I have experienced with my kids. So I have 4 kids. 3 of my kids I'm being alienated from. I have a 3-year-old that I have not had a visit with since December of 2021. I have an 8 and a 10-year-old with my ex-husband, and my 3-year-old was with an ex-boyfriend. He has legal custody of her. With my 8 and my 10-year-old, I actually have legal custody of them, but my ex-husband took them, and we have joint. Okay, so we have joint custody. Me and my ex-husband have joint custody, and he took my kids and quit following the visitation guidelines, and just basically kidnapped my kids. But what do you do when it's a parent that takes your kids? And what do you do when somebody you've known your entire life, talking about a family member, not my ex-husband, somebody that has access to my kids, completely changes? In April or May of 2021, this family member, my mom, completely changed. Her laugh changed, her cry changed, her persona changed, completely changed. Nobody believes me. Everybody kind of just, they've acted so bizarre about the entire situation. But with my 8 and my 10-year-old, I'm not being allowed to have any parental rights to them. I finally got a visit with my 8 and my 10-year-old yesterday, over at my mom's, and I noticed some things that are unusual, and I guess I'm just going to let viewers kind of decide what they think. So, first off, my mom, after she changed, started having visits with my kids behind my back and not telling me. Second off, that's not something that my mom would do, especially like now that I've been clean. Very unusual. Then on top of that, um, my ex-husband kind of started to act strange too. He we obviously had issues, which is why we're not married anymore, why we got a divorce, but he started acting extremely aggressive and hostile towards me. It's interesting, every time I kind of document these videos, there's always a ton of noise. It's like somebody really, really does not want me to speak out, which makes me very suspicious. But the alienation is like the tip of the iceberg in terms of what's gone on. Police would not intervene. My kids were taken out of state more than once. Police would not intervene. In fact, they acted complicit. Um, what has transpired with my kids is completely illegal. And police are aware of it, but they won't intervene. My ex-husband, yesterday, another thing I noticed that was unusual is on the phone with him, he mentioned DCFS. He talked to me as if I had been seeing my kids. He's like, well, I don't even remember exactly how he put it, but he referenced as if I had been getting visits with my kids, which I haven't. Every visit that I've had with my kids has been supervised. And he's like, well, the kids don't even want to see you. Doesn't that tell you something? You've traumatized them. And I'm like, how could I have possibly traumatized my kids when I haven't been allowed to even have a visit with my kids? I'm not even allowed to talk to them because you have complete control. When you block me, there's nothing I can do about it. The other unusual thing that I noted is that, like, when I've called police, they don't log my calls. They logged my calls as hangups, and I was just informed that a couple of months ago by one of the officers. So why are they lying? Second off, every time I start to document, somebody hurrying pulls up, and like this car pulls up and parks right next to me. Like, okay, strange. No, it's not a coincidence. Third, I've noticed that my daughter in particularly has changed. Um, my 10-year-old, her teeth used to be crooked. She has a crooked tooth on the front because she used to, instead of sucking on her thumb, she would suck on her finger, and she did that for years, and it caused this tooth to be crooked. At the visit yesterday, her tooth was completely straight. She has not had braces. She's 10 years old. Somebody please explain how that's possible. Here's the other thing that's odd. The pictures, all the memories I have of my kids have been altered. I got locked out of my Google account, which, obviously is linked to my Google Photos. I got locked out of my iCloud account. I got locked out of my accounts right around the time I got alienated from my kids. I got alienated from my kids 3 months after my mom changed. I got into a car accident and I relapsed. And initially I could understand why I was being separated from them. But then after I got clean, because I got pregnant, they still wouldn't allow any visitation. They wouldn't allow me to talk to my kids. And then my pregnancy, like, that was a whole other weird, the way that was handled, and the care that I received during my pregnancy was not up to par with the health standards and what the law would obviously not recommend, but I can't think of the word. That's another post for another day, and I have posted on it, but I get hate messages, which is so unusual and weird to me. So yeah, I noticed, I was so grateful to have a visit with my kids, but I think the reason they've alienated from my kids is because A, they're scared of what my kids are going to say to me, and B, they don't really know how to confront the fact that there's some differences, and they're going to have to answer to me, but right now it's just easier to say that I'm crazy and kind of push me away. I'm not really sure what to think, because this is not a topic that's talked about. Since COVID-19, pretty much, we don't really have news. We don't have access to news. And on my TikTok account, I posted about how during the time I got alienated from my kids, I got locked out of my account, my phones got hacked, and I posted about my phone getting hacked on TikTok. And they removed the post and said it was against community guidelines, which just doesn't make any sense to me. Why am I not allowed to tell people that my device is intercepted? So it's not just that I have like an asshole ex-husband, it's a whole system of what seems to be a communist type system where I'm being silenced. I'm not allowed to speak out. My phone is hacked, which is completely illegal. And yeah, you could say, well, just get another phone. Well, it's every single phone I get, it's hacked. The police seem to be complicit. I've called the police multiple times. I've gone into the police station. They just go along with it. I've showed them my custody agreement, and they still wouldn't budge in terms of like intervening, which is what they would do. If I took my kids and illegally cut them off from my ex-husband, the cops would have showed up at my house and removed my kids from me and taken them to my ex-husband. But they would not do the same with me. And so I feel like what's going on is it's a trafficking situation, and there's people that are possibly in government that are involved, and so they're covering it up, whatever means possible. But please explain to me, and I love my daughter. Even if there was a million copies of her, I would love her no matter what. But how does a 10-year-old, how does her tooth just completely change? And it's not just that. It's that also, because I would have just thought maybe I was crazy, but it's not just that. It's that I have family members that I've known my entire life that completely changed overnight, that are doing things that they would never do in a million years, like that are reckless towards themselves. All of that. And then I have to do segments because it's like there's so much going on, and it didn't just happen, 2.5 years ago. It started over a decade ago, but 2.5 years ago was kind of the pivotal moment of when I got in a car accident. I relapsed after 7 years, and my kids were taken from me. My phone got hacked. I had identity theft issues. Um, I was pretty much treated like a stowaway. I got kicked out multiple times during my pregnancy. I had to sleep at homeless shelters. Actually, with my baby for 4 months, I was at a homeless shelter with her. And I think that there's been gaslighting going on. The gaslighting happened, like, it started happening way before all of this. It started happening like over a decade ago. But I always kind of dismissed it as my paranoia. But about 2.5 years ago, I started to realize, like, there's no way. It's not just my paranoia. I got assaulted in my own house. I was told by a hospital that I was not allowed to report the rape. So it's like a whole system. It's like a village, where cops are complicit. They won't intervene. I'm not being told directly. There's people gaslighting me, and it's like, well, how are all of these people involved, and why would all these people at different places give a shit about my life? When I say like random people, I mean like the gas station or like the grocery store, the mall. Everywhere I go, people seem to be trying to like fulfill like this narrative, and I'll get into that later. That does sound like paranoia, and I can completely acknowledge that, but what you need to understand is it's not. I dismissed a lot of my thinking, and the gaslighting is my thinking and my paranoia until it became impossible to ignore. I'm starting to research conspiracy theories because of what happened with my kids. With my 3-year-old, I noticed in some of the more recent pictures of her, her hair color changed. She's Hispanic, and so her hair was like a dark brown black, and her hair is now turning blonde. I'm not allowed any visitation with her, even though in our custody agreement it states I am allowed visitation. I'm not being allowed visitation with her. And again, police won't intervene. I'm being told I can't get a lawyer. And it's not even just the custody that, you know, is not, I don't want to say bothering, but is ruining my life. It's the fact that my entire identity got taken from me. And again, police will not intervene. At the visit with my kids yesterday, I did notice they wanted me to leave 2.5 hours early. My mom kind of just seemed to want to push me out, and she wanted time alone with my kids, which was unusual, again, because my mom would have never done that. My mom, like, anytime that she had my kids, she was always kind of wanting me to be there with her. So that's unusual. And then I'm just feeling really unsettled and uneasy about a lot. And like I said, I'm going to do segment posts because I want to talk about some of the conspiracy. And it's sad that they're called conspiracy theories when I've actually personally experienced this shit, and it's not a conspiracy. But I want to know what to do. One thing I haven't talked about is in terms of the gaslighting. I was cut off from my kids completely, like no supervised visitation, no talking to them on the phone, because my ex-husband blocked me from May to September. During this time, I was also rendered homeless. My mom kicked me out. She'll find ways to just get me out when she needs me out of her way, but during this time, she kicked me out. And then my kids went out of state. Also during this time, my wallet that contained my ID, my state identification, and my social security card got taken during this time. Um, so, and that was like the third time that's happened where my ID goes missing. It's the third time or second time I think that my kids have been taken out of state and the police won't intervene. The other part of the gaslighting is people are indirectly and were more before treating me like I'm not the mom. And I think the rumor is, and I think they're trying to cover this up, but they're kind of using me as a scapegoat for somebody else who probably did traffic me and my kids. Um, they basically indicated that I'm not a mom, and it's interesting because they didn't start gaslighting me about this until after they took my kids, after they had my kids away from me. And after the cops wouldn't intervene, so I guess in their mind they kind of figured I can get away with it now. Then they started to make claims saying I'm not the mom. And when I would call my kids on the phone, my ex-husband would say, Shannon wants to talk to you. Do you want to talk to Shannon? Yesterday they finally started regarding me as mom again, and my ex-husband finally regarded me as mom again, but for months they weren't regarding me as mom. Like when I would call them on the phone, I was called Shannon, and then my ex would block me, and the only way for me to really get in contact with him was to show up at his house and just say, hey, what's going on here? But what's interesting is during all of this, my mom has been allowed visitation. During all of this, somebody has been using my identity, and in fact they got disability using my social. Also, during all of this, when I was ridden homeless, there's a program called Rapid Rehousing that is supposed to get people that are experiencing homelessness into housing fast. And they give you vouchers, and pretty much every apartment I went to go look at either told me that, like, oh, they couldn't accept me because this or because that. One of them finally said, like, I don't want you filling out an application because we're scared you're going to accuse us. But really, I had just questioned them because they told me as part of the application process, they needed my divorce decree, which contained information about the child support I had been receiving. I told them I'm not receiving child support anymore. I do not physically have my kids. My husband is not following the custody agreement, so I'm not getting child support. But they still wanted to see my divorce decree. So yeah, I questioned them, and they ended up not letting me fill out an application after they took all of my personal information. So part of my suspicion is that somebody that's also using my identity probably got housing and probably does have visits with my kids. And again, I could go over the conspiracy theories that I think are tied to this, but I'll get into that later. I guess I kind of want to know, what would you think in this situation? Because when I tell people what I have thought about and what I've possibly concluded based off like my own conclusions and based off what people have actually told me, because yes, even though nobody has come out and explained to me the entire situation, people have tipped me off, and I've received anonymous messages that have also given me pieces of information, but not the full truth. And so, yeah, I've made some of my own conclusions, but I guess I just want to know what other people would think in this situation.